Hello, Internet. It is that Silverline show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, and I am joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello.
Yes. And tonight we're going to be talking about superheroes with disabilities.
That is such a vague subject too, because there are those that have disabilities that gives them not so much gives them powers, but that facilitates into their powers, and then there's disabilities like literal physical disabilities.
Yeah, we'll probably be getting a bit into both, and maybe getting some instances that we think is good use of it, or what we think is bad use or a bit silly.
Sure.
Yes, but yeah, talking about a bit all of that and try to keep it as packed tight within an hour as possible. Probably be not necessarily ranking them because that seems a bit weird. But yeah,
I mean, I think we'd catch some flack for that.
Yes, but definitely there's some that I think are a bit more near and dear to me just because they're who I've read. So
that's fair. That's fair.
So yeah, that's what we're going over. So before we get into it, I guess I'll open up Jose. What's been your experience with superheroes with disabilities? What maybe was it your first encounter with that, or what do you think of that as a concept?
So my first impression, obviously, I think for everyone as well, probably the first one that comes to mind, even when you're young, the first time you get into comics and stuff like that, is probably Professor X.
Yeah.
But for me, even before Professor X, there was the Chief for Doom Patrol.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I wondered why he was in a wheelchair and all. That just it didn't hit me like, oh man, this is terrible and whatnot. It was more like, oh, that's an interesting. He's leading and still in a wheelchair. So, like I said, to me, that predated Professor X in regards to my experience with comics.
Yeah.
So, but I thought it was interesting. It's as I got older, probably just out of high school and whatnot, I think they started coming in with the new Warriors, or maybe I was still in I was out of high school, I think. New Warriors, and so that brought in characters like Silhouette.
Mm-hmm.
And Silhouette, I think she had MS because she had the walkers on her hands, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was an interesting thing, because to me that kind of brought disabilities to the forefront, for me to be able to recognize that and see it's oh
yeah.
It's not just like a car accident that happened. There's something physically, and there's physically an issue. So
yeah,
that wasn't something I was accustomed to, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I think for me, some of my first encounters was with Professor X, but also around the same time when I was getting comics, they had before Jubilee became a vampire.
Best thing ever happened to her.
Yes,
there.
But they had established that she had dyscalculia. How do you pronounce that? But it's like dyslexia, but for numbers and equations, essentially.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's a learning disability that your brain rearranges calculations in a way that so it makes it impossible to solve them, essentially.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so that was kind of a weird thing to see, when you have superheroes and stuff where something's, you're taught is kind of fundamental when you're in school, but then you have a person who is supposed to be, a superhero, and there's this one, thing that their brain just doesn't let them do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know she had that. That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not cool. You know what I mean?
Right. It's kind of the thing, though. It's cool to see it put on page, or to see how an artist tackles,
right,
taking those things that exist in real life and then telling a super story around that. I think one of my favorite examples and something that really hit me the hardest though was when uh, Hawkeye had that moment where his yeah, I don't think they had really introduced it before that, but they had that moment where his hearing aid popped out, and then he had to sign to who he's with, and they're like, "Oh, Hawkeye's deaf." So Hawkeye's been one of my favorite characters who's had to deal with some sort of disability just because of I've read a lot of Hawkeye. I think he's a
Right.
fun character.
I think that's neat. They incorporated that into the show as
Yeah.
well. It's like,
Also,
yeah, I didn't know he was deaf.
okay, yeah, that's something that popped up, and then depending on the writer, or varying levels. So depending on the
Right.
writer, either he'll be completely deaf and is entirely reliant on his hearing aid, or he'll be mostly deaf and uh, can hear like background reverberations.
Do you find, I mean, is that something, I mean, as a writer, is that something hard to incorporate into your writing?
Depending on the medium, I mean, you could. I mean, also the technology now makes things kind of weird in that. Thankfully, technology is always trying to find ways to improve situations around disabilities. So if you really wanted to, you could just say that Hawkeye has a cochlear implant and it never comes up.
Okay,
But
that's
then,
fair. Yeah.
I have heard that readers who are deaf like reading Hawkeye or Echo because seeing someone who like they can relate
Yeah, I
to,
was just say they can relate to that.
yeah. So it almost feels like you'd be cheapening that experience. So that's one thing I
Sure.
really liked from the show is that you had playing him opposite Echo,
Right.
where you had and they both had very different reactions, not only to their circumstances but their deafness.
Yeah, the way they accepted it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I thought that was really cool to see. A show that was because of that predominantly disabled. Yeah, but yeah, if we're doing something like uh, you don't necessarily want to make the entire story revolve around their disability either, but I think you always want to in some way include it. So
Well, I think there's a balance, right? You, I
there's
mean,
always finding that balance. Yeah.
if you focus on that, just that, then it becomes about like, um, I remember, was it and it's not a tangent, but like I remember, like I think it was an episode of like, I don't know, Fresh Prince or something like that, or no, it was Saved by the Bell,
Okay.
and somebody was in a wheelchair, and so like Zach Morris was like watch out, girl in a wheelchair, like just made a big stink about it, like he was an advocate, to protect her and whatnot. And she was like, dude, I don't need protecting, like I've done with this forever, like just
Right.
treat me normal. So I think that in regards to like you said, how they see, I knew I was going to go into a tangent.
Yeah. That's what the show is. That's all
I
podcast
know,
is. This guy's just going on
that's kind of
tangents.
what we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like you were talking about, the way they interpret it, the way they accept it, and live their life accordingly. You know what I mean? And um, the way people accept it, the disability of someone else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How they interact and process that. I think that's interesting.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think there are moments where you do want to tell that story that is entirely revolved around disabilities, like when it's maybe having a character getting accustomed to that. It's especially popular in like children's TV show because you know there is like a semi-educational component of children's TV or
Right.
children's books where you're trying to like normalize certain things, but uh, even like in the very, very adult fiction, Johnny Got His Gun, where the guy in World War One lost his limbs.
Isn't that the one that the MT or Metallica one is videos based off of?
Yeah, I think so. Where
Yeah,
like
where he's like communicating with his head, kill me, kill
yes,
me. Yeah.
yeah, where
I
yeah
know that's really weird, but
he's
that video
deaf.
freaked me out.
Yeah, he's deaf, blind, and lost his limbs. But that only happened after he'd already experienced a lot of the world around him. So
Right.
his brain is constantly pointing something. So that entire story is just him getting used to and rejecting the way his life became.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, Metallica is one. Follow that, but yeah. Where you're telling a story that is so where the disability has created such a dramatic change that becomes the story.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and the only reason I know that is because obviously I saw the video, but I wanted to know if that was a real movie and whatnot that it was
I
based
think,
off of.
yeah, I think, I'm pretty sure there's a movie. I know it's a novel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's I would recommend. I recommend just read. It's
A
pretty
novel.
short. Yeah, it's pretty short. It's, I think, by most standards now, be considered a novella, but it's good. Definitely one of those like uh books that when you put it down, you feel like you have 10 times more empathy.
um yeah, I don't know if I can say I've read a book that makes me feel that way.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, that's not necessarily. I mean, for the sake of telling the superhero story, because the idea of superheroes is always that even if they're not always triumphant, there's always something that they're fighting against. It's always the
Right.
action of dramatic change, or you know, um, uh, heroism, even if it's not necessarily the most well placed heroism, as Scott Summers likes to demonstrate in a lot of X-Men arcs. um, but yeah, but I think in comics you usually find a lot of really uh, more so than even really, like, I can't think of as many film examples where you have really strong, like, not just like well written strong, but also it's like powerfully imposing characters with disabilities as you do in comics. I think that plays into perhaps why it becomes such a good venue to put
Right.
characters with disabilities in.
I mean, would the classic Hulk TV series? I
I
mean,
guess, yeah.
it's kind of a disability he did to himself, where
Right.
when fight or flight
Yeah.
adrenaline starts to pump, he can't do much about that.
Right. Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
think, yeah, I think there is kind of like, I don't know if I ever heard that like come up with it. I think there's definitely is an argument for that where it's I guess you can almost use it like a metaphor for trauma responses, where someone
Right.
has like PTSD or something, you have an elevated trauma response. um yeah, that's interesting. I know kind of more on like the uh same end of trauma responses. You have characters who do have like right, again, depending on the writer, they'll explore it more or not. But you have characters like Frank Castle or Bucky Barnes who do have like diagnosed PTSD,
True.
and
True.
you'll
True.
have depending on some writers will do like, well, those have like war flashbacks or something, and it ends up the and uh when I went through Full Sail, I was friends with a group of guys, and one of them was a Marine Raider who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that's one reason why he liked those. Like, he didn't like all Punisher, but he liked those specific arcs.
Right.
Because I think the writer had talked to a lot of people when he was writing those. But he said he got right. Having a character that also has a weird snap when they hear a car misfire in the background.
Right. I have a friend who's like that.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Pops Van Zant. How are you doing today?
Hey, Pops. Well, let's see. There's also like a disability that something, I don't know if something happened to him. Honestly, I don't know if he was born that way or not, but there's, was it Kurt Connors, the lizard?
Yeah. Yes, I believe. I believe that was something that he had. Uh, I believe something where he had done something to himself and then is constantly trying to redo it or undo
Right.
it, and that's the end up making himself.
But I mean, that's still a disability, like
Yes.
even though it's like something like he did to himself or whatever, but still he has
Yeah.
one arm. He's trying to fix that. So like his logic is that he's doing it for the betterment of himself, mind you, but
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It always ends up badly, obviously.
Yeah, but he ends up actually having a really interesting moment where he still, misplaced heroism. He does some good with it. The character actually had notes on for this. Komodo, who was a younger woman who was in a car accident and lost both her legs. And essentially ended up applying for an internship under Dr. Connors, hearing about the formula.
Oh.
Yeah. And she modified it. So she ended up getting, she also became kind of a lizard and was able to regrow her legs, but didn't go full psycho like Connors did.
She didn't go the full Connor.
Yes, yeah. So she actually ended up joining a couple of the younger superhero teams.
That's interesting. I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know about her.
So I mean, it's kind of a lesser known character. I wish they did a little bit more with her. I think she's got some more stuff recently. But yeah, that's kind of an interesting point where, again, it's the same kind of thing where we have like different reactions to the same or similar disability.
Right.
Yeah.
But I like the characters that it's not like you said before, it's not the driving force of their story. You know, it's like, oh, it's not this girl with a disability. It's this girl who happens to have a disability.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's not being pedantic with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like was it Alicia Masters?
Yeah.
Like at least in the movie, Fantastic Four movie, she was blind, and she didn't let it define her. She helped Thing kind of cope with it and whatnot.
Yes. Yeah. You're right. That's also why I like Echo in the comics, because her story is very similar to what it is in the TV show, where it's a mafia revenge story.
Yeah.
It just happens that she is completely deaf. So and communicates by reading lips and signing back.
Right. And if that wasn't enough in the show, and if you haven't seen the Hawkeye show, guys, you're running behind.
Yeah.
But in the show, they gave her like an extra disability, like they cut her foot off.
The old leg, yeah. I thought that was interesting, but I guess if your dad works in like a back alley chop shop, probably not the
right
worst thing to happen. Yeah,
because deaf wasn't enough. I wasn't sure about that. Like, I mean,
yeah. I think that was because the actress has that leg, so they decided to keep it.
Right, and I mean, I think that's neat that they incorporated that into the character, as opposed to like, say, green screening it into the regular foot.
Yeah,
I'm not knocking the hello. Yeah. I'm not knocking the actress for like. I mean, I thought she did amazing.
She was great. Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was great, but yeah, I like. Then that TV show also really kind of like reminded me of how much I liked her character because of how well it portrayed it. Yeah.
And for the record, people, she's super dope when she gained the Phoenix Force.
Yes. Yes.
That was just awesome.
It was insane. It's so good. Who do I else have that I want to talk about? I mean, obviously I have a few that we'll get into because we have to talk about them. People like, Legion and so forth.
Multiple personalities.
Yeah, DID.
And each personality has a power.
Yeah, him and Crazy Jane both have dissociative identity disorder.
But each identity the same way? Wait, is Crazy Jane the one that her powers like change when her personality changes too?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she the Doom Patrol counter.
Yeah.
But yeah. So they're really interesting characters because perhaps they're a little weird when they first got introduced, but as the writers got more accustomed to writing them and making characters that it wasn't just like, oh, they're crazy. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it wasn't just becoming like, oh, they're crazy. It was actually telling the story of like, And I think the Legion TV show also did a really good job of this, is actually trying to tell experience of like, this is what it's like to live when you have multiple people in your head talking to you all
Yeah.
the time. Yeah.
When who was it? Robot Man? Wasn't it Robot Man went into her
Yeah.
brain or something like that to help her out?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think in the comics, it was Chief told Robot Man pretty much like, hey, she's your responsibility. Just make sure she's
Yep.
fine. Yeah. Yeah. And then you end up doing psychotherapy as a robot. Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That show is crazy, and as crazy as the show is, I think the book is worse.
Yes. That's what I always say. Like, I love when comics just go as like weird and unhinged as possible. Like
Right.
Moon Knight kills all the Avengers. Speaking of dissociative identity, Moon Knight
Yep.
has 4 personalities, and then that one run, the Avengers are dead, so he ends up developing the personalities of all the Avengers as a
Oh
coping
my
mechanism.
gosh.
And because of that, Khonshu grants each power to him depending on who he is that day.
That's awesome.
And he goes and fights God.
Please, Disney, do not put that in the Moon Knight show. He will break the internet.
I mean, it was already just like the Oscar Isaac acting hour. Just that was really a show where, like, if we put Oscar Isaac and Oscar Isaac in the same room and just let them act off each other,
Right.
And he's like, wait, they're the same person. Oscar Isaac said, no, I'm actually 3 people.
I agree.
Yes, it's very good. Let's see, who's also kind of lesser known.
I mean, he's what? All of a sudden, he comes in with as Poe Dameron, and then
Yes.
Apocalypse.
Yes. Poe Dameron, Apocalypse, Moon Knight. Did you ever see Triple Frontier?
That doesn't sound familiar.
It was a Netflix show. It's a dude bro action film, so don't expect Oscar worthy writing out of it. But
Fair.
It's Oscar Isaac and Diego Luna and some other person. I think I should know.
Ben Affleck is in it.
And Ben Affleck, yes.
Holy cow! Ben Affleck, Charlie Hunnam,
Oscar Isaac,
Pedro Pascal. There's a lot of people in that.
There's a lot of people, yes.
How have I not seen that?
But you can kind of tell how far I am deep in the Star Wars Marvel universe, and that the first people who come to mind were Pedro Pascal and Oscar Isaac. But Pedro Pascal, not Diego Luna. But yes, they essentially, it's what happens if Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon does a robbery on a former drug, like on a drug kingpin in South Africa or South America. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. It's again, it's one of those things where it's just, if we just got some dudes and just put them in a room and told them to act at each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That would be awesome.
Yes. What else was I thinking of?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put that on my list. I gotta.
Right.
Is it still? If it's still on Netflix, I'm gonna watch it.
I believe so. Yeah. Oh, someone that I didn't realize actually, because I only got introduced to him after his disability had actually been retconned. Which, if you're ever writing something, don't retcon disability. That's generally a bad move. So I had in my research, I found across this, and again, the retcon was not well received because obviously people had read them because like, oh, I can relate to this, and then they're like, no,
Right.
that's not actually the case. And like, well, okay, great, thanks. But Alpha Flight, Puck.
Fuck.
Yes.
So that was funny because technically, Puck started off as a regular sized man that was magically.
So that was actually
shrunk, so to
there's
speak.
actually the retcon that happened when the second writer took over for Volume 3. First volume, John Byrne created him. He had dwarfism, which caused achondroplasty. So he was in essentially constant pain, but was still just like the happy-go-lucky.
And so they retconned it into the magic shrinkage. Oh my sweet Christmas!
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh, that just tells you that was before my time on that one. Wow.
Right. Well, it was before my time, definitely. Yeah, but as I had to find that I found that out only after researching it, and the reception was not great.
No, no, I'd imagine not.
Yeah, because he actually had this, having a character who has, a very painful disability, essentially chondroplasty. It feels like your bones are constantly breaking themselves.
Right.
That's from what I gather. But he's still like the whole happy-go-lucky guy. He goes out, he gets stuff done. He's a good role model. Like, no, actually, he stole a magical item and the drug company.
Oh man. Man. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's what were you thinking, Marvel?
Yeah. And so even weirder, apparently Puck was originally designed off of one of John Byrne's friends. So imagine he was reading that when they changed it. He's like, well, the heck, guys.
Right. Yeah, somebody would have to explain it to you. Hey John,
Yeah.
what happened here, bro? What's going on, man?
Yeah. That's
Never make superheroes inspired by your friends. That's what that
yes.
tells you.
Yeah. Let's see.
There's another was it Captain Marvel Jr.? Well, I'm sorry, Shazam Jr.
Yes. Yeah. Um yeah.
Like I remember he always walked in that one crutch.
Yeah, he's also another guy that came up in my and we do plan on getting to Oracle. That is definitely on my list because I love the extended Bat family. The Batgirls has
Killing
been
Joke.
yeah, the Batgirls is one of my favorite recent books. But so Shazam Jr. There was a fight between Shazam at the time, Captain Marvel, and his nemesis, Captain Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, who had
The names were amazing back then.
yes. There was once where I feel like the writers came like, "Hey, we need a new bad guy." He's like, "Nazis."
Like Captain Nazi. I was like, yeah. And then when they did, what was it, Justice Society and whatnot, like we can't name a guy Captain Nazi. Let's just call him Blitzkrieg.
Thanks.
It's like, oh man.
Yeah. At least if they make him lightning powers and stuff, Blitzkrieg is kind of cool. But it's like Captain Nazi. Like, well, I feel like it's a bit on the nose, guys.
Right?
It's one of the things where, like, it's like Combo Man. Like, that's what it is. What the name is. You gotta love it, but also you're like, we could have come up with like 50 other
Combo
ideas.
Man needs to always be brought back
Yes.
into conversation at all times.
Yes. If I could get like a Combo Man T-shirt,
right?
I'm print demand to make my own. Yeah.
Dear Marvel, just so you know, Tim is available to write a Combo Man story.
I will write a 12-issue Combo Man full series that'll tie into the next major event. Like
pay him in combos.
Yeah, I don't care what the next event is. I'll tie it in. Yeah. You'll literally have the least picky writer on your hands.
Right.
I feel like the joy of Combo Man is the pure commercialism and just absurdity of the character. Shazam fought Captain Nazi, knocked him into the river. Freddie Freeman and his grandfather get Captain Nazi out of the river, put them on the boat. He ends up, I think, killing the grandfather and breaking the legs of Freddy by, I think, destroying the boat or something.
Right.
And so Freddy ends up getting the powers from the wizard at the end of that because Shazam takes him to the wizard. But and he's able to do stuff when he's in. He's able to walk and fly and all that when he's powered up, but when he's not powered up, he still has to use crutches.
The crutch.
Yeah.
One crutch, not crutches, the one crutch.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, Dr.
Exactly, Dr. Yes. I mean, we're already kind of halfway there with Dr. Doom, but Dr. Doom's a self-given name, and he really plays into it.
Supervillain 1, Dr. Supervillain 2.
Yes.
They're all Dr. Supervillains.
They really are.
Doctor Misunderstood.
Let's see there.
So in case anybody's wondering why I'm moving my hands, I have pencils and pens all over my desk that I
There you
have
go.
to like slowly put away because
Yeah.
I'm not using them right now. But I
Yeah.
had paper out. I was working on some pieces, some character pieces and whatnot, and so I have stuff all over my desk.
Yeah, very good. I had to move all my painting stuff off of my desk because I had already turned one pot of black paint into a small explosive, and then spent a couple hours cleaning up everything once. And I'm like, I'm not doing that again.
You're right.
Yeah. And let's see, another character which I did not realize was it's the second Hornet, Eddie McDonough, the Hornet who actually became a superhero.
Right. I don't remember
Uh,
the character.
um,
We Google stuff.
yeah, but I think the first Hornet suit was taken by an enemy of Ant-Man. Right, it's carried by that dude. But
Yellow Jacket.
Yellow Jacket, yes, is something of. So Hornet's a different guy. Yes. Same bug universe though. Yes, but Hornet I'm thinking of actually had cerebral palsy, um, and because of that had trouble walking, moving, had the muscle atrophy that set in, but had essentially modified a suit. He also worked with Black Marvel, leading into the Slingers thing, which is
Oh, okay.
yeah. But he had essentially created the suit that allowed him to be a superhero, even with uh, cerebral palsy. Being one of the most disabling disabilities that a person could have.
Interesting. I didn't
Yeah.
know
Uh, yeah. Kind of a weird character that I didn't realize had cerebral palsy because most of the time you see him on the panel, like if you didn't read the origin,
that. Right.
he's just a fallen superhero. But I imagine that if someone with cerebral palsy had learned that there's a character that has that.
I think that would go over well.
Yeah.
I mean,
We kind of want to
that's about
resurrect
it.
that start along with the chief, Tommy. Yeah.
Ah. Yes.
Yes.
Let's see. I don't know a lot of other ones, to be honest with you.
There's actually there's quite a few. Like there's a lot that I found that I either were characters that I had not encountered or didn't realize what happened.
Like Cyclops or Cyclops, right? Cyclops is a
Cyclops, yeah,
disability.
Cyclops. Yeah, he's partially blind because of his
Yeah,
superpowers.
technically he cannot shut off his optic blast.
Yeah, and yeah, he's I think he said that his vision's something like not quite blind, but on the verge of, and so part of the visor glasses are actually like also prescription in addition to being ruby quartz.
Right.
Yeah. Someone considered disabled because the bite depends on his reactor. I'd say yes, it's the same kind of thing where you have a technology that's like essentially serving as an aid.
Right.
So depending on how much you play it up, it either becomes something you don't really notice. Like if you're to just give Hawkeye a cochlear implant, you won't rethink. But there are moments where the reactor is having issues or he has to take it out or whatever, and it becomes very clear that Iron Man is not capable of like physically standing or operating on his own.
So yes, I think that the answer to that is yes.
I would say so. Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of characters that I did not actually run into or recognized, Jericho, Slade Wilson's son.
Oh, from Teen Titans.
Yeah, he's mute. Yeah. And is also kind of interesting because you have Deathstroke, who is, well, he also an eye patch, so he has partial
Right.
vision disability. Yeah, but Deathstroke is very clearly until recently, and then went back on it because comics you always have to go back. Very self-serving. uh, he's the mercenary that's someone has to die for him to get paid. Someone's going to die, and
Right.
he's going to get paid. They had a few moments where he's like, okay, maybe not everyone's going to die. Maybe I don't kill everyone.
Just some.
Just some. But Slade has always been, or his son Jericho has always been a pretty good dude.
Yeah, except for what was it the Judas Cup? Was Judas Covenant? Judas Contract?
Yeah. Except for one very bad moment.
Right.
But yes. From the SharePoint regular folks, all means are thought to be a problem. Yeah. That's also another thing is perhaps the some metaphor there on over medication or overacting, trying to completely remove disabilities is
the X-Men are what happens when you take too much Zoloft.
Yes.
Zoloft has like a 12-page side effect sheet.
Yeah. But yeah, the X cure is definitely a thing to remember. It's like maybe we don't try to fix everybody.
Or
on.
You get all, was it the right? Who was it? Cameron Hodge was the leader of.
Oh yeah.
Like they were such helpful people, constantly trying to take out mutants.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know. Just maybe with some flamethrowers and
right.
Yeah.
We're trying to help you. That's what they're all about. That's caring for your fellow man.
Right.
Caring so much we want to take you out.
Yes. Yeah, we'll get back to open mission, but also Oracle. Oracle actually has kind of an interesting discussion on this, given some recent creative choices made with her. Which I think they actually navigated very well because the writer wanted to we had that issue where like, do you completely use technology to throw away disability, and then if you're reading it you may not even relate to that disability, or how do you incorporate that? So
are you talking about when they gave her back her legs?
Yeah. They essentially had a spinal implant that allowed her to still walk, but when they were going into Batgirls, I can't remember who was writing at the time. I just find them on Twitter because I like that book. But they said what they didn't want to do that because they had friends in wheelchairs, and they felt like that'd be kind of like a low blow to them to just be like, by the way, the one character you get to see yourself in, gone.
Right, we're taking it away.
Yeah. So the way they're treating it, it's kind of like it's like most other modern disability aids, where it'll get the job done, but it still sucks, and you need to relax after you are active on it. So the idea is that it allowed her to be active for several hours a night or whenever she is active, but she would still need to use a wheelchair for the majority of her getting around, just because that way she's not putting unnecessary strain on her body.
Right. I like some of the art that they did for her. There's one, I'm not sure if it's from the comic or not, but she has a wheelchair strapped to her and she's doing pull-ups.
Yeah.
Well, that is just, she's hardcore, man.
She is, yes. Yeah. Barbara Gordon is just like I think there's also that moment where Punchline had broken into her office, but she had fought off Punchline in her wheelchair just using a handgun.
Nice.
Yeah. A very badass character.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
What about was it Orphan? Orphan's not necessarily a disability, but she did have a social thing. She wasn't trained to talk to people and not. So for the longest time she couldn't even talk. She would just be quiet, and then she would only say one word here or there. You know what I mean? Until they finally transitioned her to being full actual sentences.
Yeah. And that was it wasn't quite like you said, it wasn't quite fully, explicitly stated as a disability, but from what I got in conjunction to, talking to people who realized that it kind of related to people who deal with autism,
Right.
and the idea of learning social cues much later in life, and even then, and not necessarily being, forefront in your mind or something that's native to you. It's something you actually have to like focus on and learn, and
Right.
when you're in a conversation, still pay attention to, because it's not natural. So yeah, I definitely, even though it's not, explicitly say, I definitely see the where it could be in there.
And then let's see, Cable has a
yeah,
because he was infected with a techno-organic virus.
Yes,
and
which and I believe that was their attempt on essentially tackling what would cancer be like, because you had Deadpool actually had cancer, but you have the and here was another part where it was like, if you had a form of super cancer, what that look like, where it's you're essentially something that it's just killing you, and all you can do is fight and try to hold on.
You're right.
Yeah. So much so that he has to spend Cable, who would be an Omega level mutant, is actually has to use all of his telekinesis to keep those cells contained within his body. Otherwise, he lets it slip.
Except for at the end of, and obviously it's Marvel, so no one ever stays dead.
Yeah.
But the end of Messiah, was it Messiah Complex? Was it that one, or was it the storyline just after when he brought Hope back?
Like, you remember Hope? Yeah, it was Messiah Complex, Messiah War.
Yeah. So he brought Hope back, and then he got stuck in the portal or whatever on purpose. He let his techno-organic virus go to stop. Man, I'm not gonna lie, that made me get choked up.
Mm-hmm. Well, he also had in the our run that I have that I keep on talking about, the one that's illustrated by Rocky Kim. I think I should search for there. He ends up they kind of do some weird stuff in there where he essentially put himself on ice because Cable would come back. But he put himself on ice to keep the organic virus at bay, because he could no longer do that. He can no longer contain it while still be. He felt like he couldn't protect Hope and do what he needed to do while he was holding himself back.
Right.
So he put himself on ice and then made a batch of clones of himself to go into the field.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. And so, and Hope actually had some strong words for him when she came into the chamber, because she's like, "I've been watching you die over and over again, and I can't take it."
Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, now everyone can die and come back, and everyone dies and has a spawn point now.
Yeah. I think Cable's actually one of the weird exceptions, because young Cable can, but old Cable can't, because old Cable because of the way his body slide has worked, he'd always go back to the ship. So, but Krakoa can't pull onto that consciousness. So, old Cable's the one who still has stakes, essentially.
Right.
Whereas young Cable was the one who was shot back to Earth as if he had to avoid being in contact with the technovirus.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, okay. There's a young Cable and an old Cable now, and it's.
Well, I like was it Nathan Gray, Age of Apocalypse Cable? I liked him during Age of Apocalypse, but then he got kind of weird.
Yeah.
And
he got weird, and then he got even weirder when they had the World of X arc, where he became Mutant Jesus. It's like, I've created this world where people are only mutants, and then Apocalypse has that being like, "Hey man, that's kind of messed up."
Right.
Like, when Apocalypse tells you that you're doing something weird, you're not believe it.
It's like, I've been around since Egypt. You're being just a weird guy. We need to stop this. Just no. How about no?
Yeah.
Who else? Daredevil,
of course, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. In same vein, Dr. Midnight.
Oh yeah, Dr.
Also
Midnight.
blind. Yeah.
Why did I not say that one first, man?
Because I'm a fanboy, so I immediately pull the Marvel out of people. I think also just because you get much more Marvel exposure because DC's got to figure out what they're going to do with their film stuff. So
well, that's probably true.
yeah, but yeah, they're very interesting that it's one of those things where I think those are some really good examples of finding the balance, and that they have Doctor Midnight has an actual superpower. Daredevil has a quasi superpower that he's just he hears
Right.
real good. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, but and is able to work on that. But you do end up there have been moments where again that depending on the writer, that hearing may not be as good as it is with other writers. So you still have moments where he ends up bumping into a wall or accidentally walks into like somewhere he's
What
not.
was it? I think I want to say it was an old Marvel trading card from like the 90s and whatnot. But was it Daredevil? They said that like they had it where he had heightened senses, like
Yeah,
all his like sense of taste, sense of smell, stuff like
yeah,
that was all heightened. That
yeah,
he could tell you the ingredients in a pie.
yeah,
Like I'm
yeah,
like that's just weird.
yeah. Again, there's some writers where they turn it into like, no, everything is up to superhuman levels and just make him
Right.
insane superpower. Whereas other writers just treat him as if he is a guy with above average hearing and above average fighting capabilities. So it's most more like he just has like a combat sense.
Right. And that. I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
definitely. I mean, like it's that one thing where if you've been in, Curtis talked about this on several shows ago. But even speaking from boxing, you would get to a point where you feel like you could do it blindfold because you just develop a sense where like I'm going to do this, this, and this. They're going to do this, so then I do this, this, and this, and they do this. And if people aren't trained fighters, they usually fall into those same patterns of reaction,
Oh,
or you can usually depending on
do you think
yeah.
that Seafood Curtis could blindfold fight street thugs? I
Well,
mean, he's superhero level now, isn't he?
right. Well, he had mentioned where he had someone come up and threatened him, and without thinking, the punch coming at him before he knew it, he had countered and had pushed the guy away. And it's got one where you do develop a combat sense where your body just knows what to do based on the inputs it's given. So,
All right, well, I'm gonna put it out there. Seafood Curtis is Daredevil.
there you go. But I mean, that's definitely where like you have moments in boxing where someone throws a jab and you feel, and then you just feel like a certain level of like wind go past your
Right.
face that their hand has passed, and you're like, okay, I roll under here, and then I hit them in the kidney.
Man. Yeah, I would not. The level of wind I would feel would probably be them punching me in the face. Yep.
Yeah. No, I mean it's all a matter of practice and repetition. It is that moment of like your body will react once you get used to that training. Like Daredevil is one of the most highly trained people in combat in the Marvel world. So that level of training, your body just can almost like fight on its own essentially.
Nope, that would not be me.
Okay. Anyone else you feel like you particularly want to mention or cover?
Let's see. Billy Bennett, or not Billy, but Freddie.
Yeah.
And Jericho. You mentioned Jericho, Dr. Midnight. I missed that one. Slipping in my old age. I don't think DC necessarily stresses a lot of like disabled people.
That's one thing. I find DC has a lot of like really, except for covers, where you get like Hispanic or African American representation, but not too many disabled characters.
Right. He's gonna trip me out. The dude that has a Al Capone puppet on his hand, the Batman villain.
Oh,
Puppet Master?
Puppet Master?
Is that his name? I think Puppet Master is a Marvel name.
Puppet Master. Earth 2.
The ventriloquist. That's who he is.
Okay.
The ventriloquist. And so he's all like fugue state and pretty much all the time, except for like him working like the Al Capone mobster puppet.
Yes.
And that dude did that, like all the emotions, like anything he emotes and whatnot comes through that puppet as opposed to him.
Yeah, that's actually Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's actually one where I also had some interesting stories, and like not the best way to perhaps showcase a mental disability in some cases, but in other cases they do it really well depending on
Right.
who's writing it. But he has severe schizophrenia to the point where he's had a complete psychological break. So the reality he perceives is not the reality that's around him,
Right.
and he perceives it through the puppet essentially. And some writers have made that very, um,
Now, I've not seen, and it's probably out there, but I've
yeah,
not seen a ventriloquist specific book like that focuses on him. I'd love to see a book that where the story is being like unfolded and told, but you see it through his point of view. Like, so let's
right.
say, like his point of view are like rainbows and butterflies and whatnot,
Mhm.
except for the puppet on his hand, and then everything else is going on. Like, I would love to see it from his point of view, like how he
How
sees
he
the
sees
world.
reality. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that'd be also a good way to explain because that's uh, one of the cool things about like social media is that it does you to follow people you would normally interact with. So one of the people I followed in the early days of like TikTok and YouTube Shorts is a guy who deals with schizophrenia,
Okay.
and just him talking about that experience of seeing people who aren't there, and then you have to ask your friends like, is that a thing or is that my head? And he had to take some focus where like you have moments where perhaps Batman's talking with someone else in Arkham or whatever, and they actually do really good at explaining like, well, the guy is like he's just reacting based on his inputs. Like he's just this like he's getting receiving different inputs than you are, so he's reacting to that.
Right.
And then you have other moments where they make him just look like the most maniacal psychotic person. You're like, well, okay. But yeah, an interesting case of where you could perhaps show something in like a really interesting like three-dimensional light of it, like we could do with doing a book that's specifically on how do those inputs
Right.
look to him and
How
why he does react the way he does,
like I
or
said,
like
in regards to like specifically to like the ventriloquist, like just because he is like absolutely like almost catatonic except for moving around and
yeah,
like you know what I mean? Does he envision the world being like pastels and brights and whatnot?
yeah,
Like everything is like, perfect and nice. And then those times where like they actually managed to pull the puppet off his hand, all of a sudden that world shatters and like the grittiness and dirtiness of the world. Like I don't know.
right,
Like I think there's like if there isn't hasn't already been, because I've not seen one, that would be an interesting story to just to depict his like mental state through his point of view. You know what I mean? How
yeah,
he sees it, how he copes, like his coping mechanism.
yeah, definitely. And if like a writer could get that, if a writer and artist could get that, team could get that right, and like really like do a good job of showcasing like what would happen for a schizophrenic to become what he became, like what would
Right.
that look like, and what? Yeah, I think it'd be a really good. That'd be a book that I'd definitely pick up for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
Heck yeah, because that to me would be reminiscent of was it a Bat Might Fall?
yeah,
Like if you ever saw or if you ever read like Batmite, obviously Batmite's a little like interdimension character that comes
yeah.
in it like messes around with Batman, right?
Hmm.
But during the storyline Might Fall, a guy that like has like drug issues, right?
Yeah,
And he would come to this guy and he asked him for help because the Might Bane broke his
mhm,
back.
yeah,
And so he came to our dimension to come get this guy to come into his dimension to help, right? So he comes in, he realizes he can manifest all kinds of like suits. He decided to make himself like Azrael Batman,
hmm,
right? And go after all these other like the villains and whatnot in this storyline. And the Bat Bane had Venom, but it was called something else that like juiced him up. He's like,
right,
well, it can't be that bad, right? And so like without giving away the end of the book, but um he ends up tasting it, right?
mm,
And because it's from an alternate dimension, it affected him, it like basically shattered him, period. You know
yeah,
what I mean? And just blew his brains out
yeah,
because just of how like potent and like different it was. But like just the take that he going into this other like might world and whatnot to like change things. And then at the end of the book, he's basically like, in some nameless dead guy and in his crappy hotel room or whatever. But in my world, they've got a statue erected of him in his Azrael suit and whatnot because he died
Yeah.
a hero, right? But like
Yeah.
just the transition, then you think about it, like, did that really happen, or was that just his mental state? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I just thought it was a really good book. So like thinking of that, a ventriloquist book in that same vein would be like really cool to read.
Right. Yeah, definitely, for sure. Let's see. Uh, Speaking of Bane, I think it's.
Oh, that's another one. Misty Knight. Misty Knight only has like one eye.
Yeah, yeah. I lost her arm in a, I think also in a car accident, and eventually ended up having
The bionic arm.
a bionic arm. Yeah, Roman. There. Okay, yeah, that also kind of interesting character. Psycho Pirate.
Oh, Psycho Pirate's the only person that remembers the time before Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yes.
Before Hyper Time.
Yeah, I remember. I think also they end up saying they end up remembering all realities, and that ends up causing them to have a psychotic break where he stops, and is essentially forced on the drug that forces him to become catatonic because he just starts perceiving everything at once. So, not necessarily name schizophrenia, but perhaps Lovecraftian take on schizophrenia.
Right.
Yeah. He's also the only person who could help Bane overcome his addiction to venom. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Because in his presence when he's catatonic, essentially resets people's neural pathways to where they were before. So he can undo the damage that Venom did to Bane's brain. However, Bane also atrophies. So that's Tom King's Batman run, actually. Yeah. Good. See. I guess speaking of perhaps like Venom addiction being a form of disability, drug addiction being perhaps a self-imposed disability.
Right.
You also have people like Iron Man who at points was an alcoholic.
Oh yeah.
Severely. Yeah.
That was a big storyline.
Yes. Where, making some decisions to cope with something ends up leading to, creating your own form of disability or addiction that you can't necessarily break free of without outside intervention.
Right.
Yeah.
I had another one. I found another list. Right.
Okay.
It's got some interesting ones. I didn't know. Here it says Claw from Marvel Comics missing a hand, but wasn't Claw a robot?
Let's see.
Like in the comic book, wasn't he a robot?
He's Claw. Okay, so before he got transformed, he was a human who lost his arm. But yeah, I guess I remember both.
Okay, I didn't even know that he was a human. I just assumed they decided in the movie when they made was it Andy Serkis Claw that just did it because they wanted to have a human factor playing into the character.
Yeah, no, but yeah, he ended up dying in the first version of Thunderbolts when they're still a gang.
Interesting.
And yeah, Project Pegasus takes his arm and ends up remaking him as a robot man.
Okay. And the list also mentioned the Brain, So the brain is a character from Brotherhood of Evil. Brotherhood of Evil. Brotherhood of Evil. I think it's just Evil Villains or Evil. Brotherhood of Evil. It had was it? It had Madame Mala, this monkey, but it was basically just a brain in a robot, like R2D2 robot thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember that it had
Monsieur Mala. I think that's what it
yes.
was. The monkey was Monsieur Mala. And then there was
Yeah.
Proteus, who was the big Chemo. I think it was Chemo. And I'm not gonna look him up because I'm not gonna be happy not knowing.
Right. Yeah,
I have them in my Who's Who book, so
yeah. Yeah, I remember Brain when they shoved him in the black robot body.
yeah.
Yeah.
Brotherhood of Evil. Imagine that. Yeah, the brain, Monster Mala, Gemini, Warp, Plasmus. That's who it was. Telling you, I semi know my stuff.
And,
Honestly, I'm surprised I remember that. Like, I mean, when I saw that brain, what the heck?
right.
Oh, I know who that is. And I think they was it Teen Titans or Doom Patrol villain group?
Yeah, Doom Patrol, yes.
Doom
yeah.
Patrol,
He was,
okay.
Brain was Chief's nemesis, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Black Rider. Black Rider is from DC Comics, and he's this paraplegic like soldier, and I think he's supposed to be like Death or something like that. He comes in and he's got a helmet and a skis, right?
Okay.
And he comes in to like guide people to the underworld or something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think Black Rider. I think it's Black Rider.
Oh, Black Racer.
Black Racer. That's what
Yes.
it's. I'm close.
Physical manifestation of the aspect of death. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely. Okay. Well, we've been at this for a little over an hour. Anyone else you feel like you particularly need to bring up or mention?
I think I'm surprised I got Black Racer.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely, because kind of listed through a lot of the characters that we thought that come to mind or they did research on when it comes to disability comics, and there's
Right.
a lot, and probably even more that we haven't even touched.
I think a lot of the ones we brought up were more mental disorders.
Some are
Just
mental,
just a few physical here and there,
physical,
but
yeah. And the mental ones we talked a bit about, like representing it necessarily in a good way, and also sometimes in a bad
Right.
way, yeah. Or in some cases, physical disability, deciding to retcon it and.
Oh man, Marvel, buddy, come on now, come on, guys.
Yeah, but yeah, hopefully this is interesting and perhaps give you some more characters to read on your own time if you're interested in any of those
If
people.
this doesn't tell you, minus the fact that some of them we looked up, that Tim and I know a lot of older comic stuff.
Oh,
Like, man, you should
right.
feel sorry for us.
I mean, I think the people can see the encyclopedia wall we have behind
No,
me.
that's
This
true.
is
That's true.
one
Mine's
of
across the room.
there you go. Yeah, this is one of 3 shelves.
You win.
But yeah, but also if you're writing or illustrating comics, hopefully it also gives you an idea of perhaps good ways of finding that good balance or pitfalls to avoid that would perhaps make the telling the disability story make it boring or pedantic even.
Right. Or at bare minimum, like it gives you something to look up and learn about something. Like if you're like even as an artist, like trying to depict, say, a physical disability, you have to research perspectively being able to draw like wheelchairs or anything
Yeah.
of that nature. You know what I mean? Wheelchair ramps for buildings and stuff like that. Like you have to take that into consideration. But
Yeah.
also writing, like that's just research, and you should be okay with wanting to do that. Like you should be okay with
Yeah.
like, I mean, anything you can learn that way you can like you can understand. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
and that's what it boils down to, is like understanding that physical, mental, any kind of disability, it can make for great stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, look at Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump was, you know, a movie where like he was a little mentally slow and whatnot.
Yeah.
But made for a great story. You know, Nell was raised by her grandmother who had a stroke. So the way she communicated and the way she said words were the way that her stroked grandma taught her to say them. And obviously she stroked out, so like she can not say the words properly. So Nell didn't learn them properly. Great movie, by the way.
Yes.
From back in the day with Jodie Foster.
I forgot to mention also one character, disabled comic book character that should have been top of mind for me. Group Captain James Willard from Wolf Hunter. I remember I intentionally wrote a character to cover some, but lost a leg, so he's dealing with not just a prosthetic, but an old school World War II wooden prosthetic, which not great, and also deals with severe PTSD from surviving a plane crash and a little bit of survivor's guilt.
So. I'm going to say that you kept it top two to make it easy for everybody else, but go out and read Wolf Hunter, people.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, it's speaking of as an artist having to draw things a little bit differently, we didn't really say that in the Christmas special because it didn't really come up, but in the main Wolf Hunter story, we do see the fact that you don't necessarily draw full walking movement in a comic, but you still have to cover like leg movement or like legs being in different positions they're moving. And if you're working with a prosthetic like that, your leg's not going to work the same as it did before. So he had to put his leg in different positions, or there are moments in issue 2 where his leg dislodges or gets knocked off. So then as an artist, you have to figure out what that looks like to have a wooden leg snap off while it's still in someone's trousers, essentially.
That's just reference. That's like I said, in regards to like as an artist, like things like that, prosthetic arms, prosthetic anything really. Even drawing Iron Man's friggin' arc reactor. That's you want to reference that. Obviously, you can't reference some things. You know what I mean? You got to kind of make them up as you go along. But like the closer you are to it being in regards to like real life stuff, the more people are going to relate to it. The more people are going to say, oh, yeah, they did that right. Because my wife will watch any movie that has a lady going into labor and she literally wants to throw everything near her at the TV.
Yes.
Because the reality of a lady going into labor and the dramatization of it in a movie, TV show, etc., are not the same.
Yeah.
Right. The drama of it is what it pulls people in and whatnot. But it's not reality. Same thing with certain like aspects of comic books. Like I said, the handicap ramp, things like that, things of that nature. Like even those little things, anybody that has a disability, that's something that they do, that's something that they use, they're going to recognize that right away, that someone did the research for it. Yeah. So as an artist, it behooves you to do due diligence in regards to like what you're the subject upon which you're drawing about.
Yeah. And as a writer, it becomes your challenge to make that character still three-dimensional and interesting around that, not make them more than just their disability, but create like their actual arc beyond that. And how do they live with the disability, but how do they move beyond that, essentially?
I would say challenging on both ends.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, that's our fun show on Tuesday. We will be dark next week, as we'll be battening down the hatches for Turkey Day.
That's next week?
That's next week.
Good gravy.
Yeah, we had a meeting in our office yesterday, and like I brought up, I'm like, what the heck? Yeah.
Wow. Holy
So
cow. I have a convention that Sunday after Thanksgiving.
dang.
Man, I totally forgot.
But I believe we'll have a rerun. I'm not entirely sure. I think we have something queued up, so hopefully it's a good one. And if you're interested in catching a rerun for perhaps an older show, you feel free to check back in.
Right.
Chat
And if
amongst
it's
yourselves.
something Tim and I are both in, you know it's riveting.
Exactly. But this week still we do have the Wednesday and Sunday shows at 8 p.m. Eastern, and I believe next week they're also dark. So we will catch you the week after next. So like, we'll see you. But until that time,
Make mine
make mine
Silverline.
Silverline. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, I'm Pat Broderick. Make mine Silverline.